leadership on both sides of the aisle have to cut Medicare. Look, we've made commitments to individuals that are on Social Security, and I think it would be wrong to back away from those commitments. So those that are receiving Social Security, I think that this has to be a commitment that we keep. But these entitlement programs for the rest of us, they have to be reviewed, and cuts need to be made because the very viability of this country is at stake. Imagine an America where all of us were treated equally. The government has an obligation to provide a level playing field for all of us. This is government's job. But it's the job that government isn't doing right now. Bailouts, stimulus packages, government doesn't create jobs. The private sector creates jobs. The economy of this country is in really tough shape, and the government should do everything it can to promote a strong dollar, not a weak one. The government should do everything it can to ensure free markets. Imagine K through 12 education in this country if educational entrepreneurs were unleashed to provide a better educational product and service at a lower price. As governor of New Mexico, I was more outspoken than any other governor in the country regarding school choice. For 6 years, I proposed giving every single student in the state of New Mexico a voucher that would have brought competition to public education. Imagine the government blowing the lid off of supply when it comes to health care. Best product, best service, lowest price. Free market reforms. Health care reform, not insurance entitlement. 43 cents out of every dollar we're currently spending is borrowed. Entitlement spending for Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid have to be cut. Did I say that earlier? Let me say it again. Entitlement spending for Medicaid, Social Security, and Medicaid have to be cut. We're broke. The national debt is $12 trillion, and it's due to double in the next 10 years to $24 trillion. And we now have $55 trillion in unfunded entitlement liabilities. And I couldn't be more opposed to tax increases, and that's exactly what's going to happen. Over an 8-year period as governor of New Mexico, not one single tax was raised. We all know that legislators spend the money that you give them, and if you give them more, they just spend more. And of course, when it comes to federal government, they're spending money that we don't have. I think we're in for a series of tax increases in this country like we have never seen unless we stand up and say something about it. Cap and trade, 25% increase in energy prices overnight as a result of taxing carbon emissions. The Great Business Migration Act of 2010. Give me a break. I'm not alone in believing that we're destined to have hyperinflation as a result of this unsustained borrowing. Money that will be worth less on the Friday when we receive our paychecks than on the Monday when we earn them. One of government's fundamental roles is to provide a strong national defense. We need to be resolved against any countries, organizations, or persons that would rise up in armed opposition to the United States. We all support and appreciate the courage and dedication of all the men and women in our armed forces. Our armed forces are an asset that should not be squandered. I I was opposed to invading Iraq before we went in. I believed that we had the military surveillance capability to see Iraq rolling out any weapons of mass destruction, and we could have gone in and dealt with that situation. I believe that invading Iraq would have found us in a civil war to which there would be no end. I thought our original mission in Afghanistan was justified. I thought our goal was to bring Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda to justice, but they're just not in Afghanistan anymore. We're building roads, bridges, hospitals, and schools in Iraq and Afghanistan, keeping in mind that 43 cents out of every dollar we spend is borrowed. Is this not insane spending? Let's bring our servicemen and women home from Iraq and Afghanistan. If we're going to find real solutions to the problems we face, we need to look for some new answers. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. Let's look at this country's war on drugs. Look, doing drugs is a bad idea. I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 22 years, and it's the best decision that I ever made. How about some common sense, reality-based thinking when it comes to drugs? A problem that's costing us $70 billion a year. Half of every law enforcement dollar spent in America today is drug-related. Half of what we spend on the courts and half of what we spend in the prisons is drug-related. Every year, 1.8 million people in this country are arrested on drug-related crimes. That is the population of New Mexico that's arrested every single year. The reality of this situation is that despite our best efforts, the war on drugs isn't producing positive results, and people are continuing to use drugs. That's the reality. In the 1920s, America faced a similar reality. In the 20s, it was the war on booze. Prohibition turned otherwise tax-paying, law-abiding citizens into criminals. Their crime? Wanting a drink at the end of a hard day. Prohibition elevated thugs like Al Capone into the most powerful, wealthy men in Chicago. Disputes were played out with guns, not in the courts. The reality was that, like it or not, moral or immoral, legal or illegal, people continued to drink. Then something happened. We got smart. Instead of making booze a criminal enterprise, we made it a commercial enterprise. We licensed booze. We taxed it. We regulated it. We took the crime and corruption out of it. I would argue that we're better off in America today for our decision to end the prohibition. The reality is that despite our best efforts at law enforcement and interdiction, people continue to use drugs in America for the same reason people continue to use alcohol. I've come to the conclusion that 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that is not to discount the problems with use, abuse, but that ought to be the focus.